welcome back to another Kill the Clock podcast. I'm Jeff Purtle here with Ravneet Singh, and today we're going to break down a few teams' off seasons, what they looked like last year, as well as what they're going to look like this upcoming year. But first, we're going to dive into some breaking news as of last night. Russell Westbrook signed a 3-year extension for $85 million to come back to the Thunder fans, and everyone in the city of Oklahoma City is breathing easier today. So what do you think about that signing, Ralph?
I'm really happy it happened. It's good to see that there's still star players who want to stay in smaller markets. And I was a fan of a small market team myself in Sacramento, and you don't attract many big name players. Even Weber didn't want to come here at first. So to see Russell kind of embrace his new role as the guy, is really refreshing to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Um, I think that there's something to be said for the saying, like, there's no loyalty in sports when it comes to players and all the moving, especially today. But Russell seems to be a pretty loyal guy. I know that several people have talked about how Westbrook has always appreciated the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder have stuck by him through the years, like wholeheartedly, religiously, even when there was so much media criticism on whether or not Russell and Kevin Durant could play together. He was always their guy, drafted him 4th overall, and I really think that their religious, backing of Russell helped in him feeling the connection to the city, to the team, the organization, and made him want to re-sign. It also doesn't hurt that it's $85 million in guaranteed money in addition. I mean, the last year's a player option, so he could opt out in the 2018 before the 2018-19 season, but he is guaranteed that money if he doesn't want to opt out. So it's a mutually beneficial signing, I think.
Yeah, and I think he actually will opt out whether he resigns with OKC or not. I mean, because but if he plays 2 more years, he gets to that 10-year mark, and then you get a bigger bonus. So I think no matter where he signs after this contract, he's going to opt out. And I think in those 2 years, he's going to find out whether he wants to be the guy at OKC, and he's probably looking for more reasons to stay in a longer deal. Can they get enough? I mean, do you think they can get enough talent around him to convince him to stay more than 2 years?
Yeah, I think that he more than likely will opt out when the 2018-19 season comes, like you said, for the 10-year marker. But being that he's 27 and the play style that he's had a couple of knee surgeries, the only situation I could see him opt in would be in the case of an injury, or a reduced play because of the explosiveness that he relies on. But I think that's an extremely unlikely scenario. So I think that it was an awesome deal for him just because it gives him the best opportunity to make the most money, in addition to the 10-year marker that he'll need for the maximum deal, the very tip max offered in the CBA, or for the insurance, just the $8.5 million increase this year, and over the next couple of years being consistent with the other top names in the league. I think it was a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of curious. I really thought that he wasn't going to sign an extension, and that Presti was going to do what he always did, which was trade that player if he can't get him to sign an extension. He did it with Harden. He didn't do it with KD, but he traded Ibaka also before. I think Ibaka only had 1 year left before he traded him, and he
Yeah.
got a lot in return for him too. So I thought that Russ was going to get traded if this extension didn't happen. I don't know. What about your thoughts?
So I definitely thought that Russ would get traded if the extension didn't happen. I thought that I didn't think that Sam Presti was going to trade him as early or as quickly as he traded the likes of like Harden or Serge. I mean, Serge was a draft night trade that was just ridiculous. Getting Ilyasova and Sabonis and Victor Oladipo, like that was. I feel like that was a deal almost too good to pass up.
Yeah.
But I do think that had Russell not signed the extension, very little chance that he would be on the Thunder come trade deadline. But I think that they would have given it to the trade deadline because he could have signed an extension basically all through the year. So I think they would have given it time. They'll try to persuade him a little bit to sign that extension, and then if nothing happened, maybe move on from him. But I'm very happy for OKC and Russ that they did sign. So it'll be exciting to see him lead the team. I think that he is going to be capable of having a top 5 MVP candidacy year, given the team that he has, the narrative that he has, and the stats that he had in the 2014-15 season with a worse team around him when Kevin Durant was out and Serge even for a little bit.
Do you think he averages a triple double?
No, I do not. Just because an 82 game season is an extremely long time to do that. We haven't seen that since Oscar Robertson. But I think that if there is anyone that's capable of it, it is Russell Westbrook. And I don't think that it's outrageous to think he'll be pretty close to it. How about you?
Yeah, I don't think he'll do it, but I was looking at like the numbers that he was producing well without KD, and it was like 30 something like that. And I think he'll be I think he'll be the closest guy to do it in a long time. And I don't know if there'll be a player who will do it ever, but I think he's the one guy that I would, if there was one guy to do it, I would put my money on him pretty much.
Totally agreed. I mean, last year in 80 games with Kevin Durant, he averaged 23 and a half points, 10 and a half assists, 10.4 assists, and 7.8 rebounds, in addition to 2 steals per game. He just fills the stat sheets. So I really don't think that it's unreasonable to be looking out for that triple double, and he's going to come out with a vengeance. I know he's the type of player to be really excited to lead a team, and I'm excited as a fan of basketball to get to watch him lead a team finally.
Yeah. Before we go into the Nets, I was gonna ask you one more thing about him. Like, um, do you think like do you think he's seen as more of a good guy now? Like he's the guy who chose to stay and KD's the villain. And it seems like everyone I talk to, they they kind of like Russ a lot more, just because like KD left and he stayed.
Yeah, so I kind of I think that especially Russell, his careers and popular or his career particularly and popularity has really had highs and lows. Like earlier, I don't think that many people were a big fan of him. There was that whole storyline of he needs to stop shooting the ball and he hogs it and he doesn't get it to KD enough. And there's a lot of truth to that, especially in his early career. And then I think that in that season where KD went out, it everyone was just like, "Oh my God, who is this guy? And how is he capable of putting up those numbers?" And even though they were 500, just the way he played, it was unbelievable. And I think since then, he's steadily grown in popularity. This past postseason against the Warriors, I think that he really gained fandom, with the exception of the last 5 minutes of Game 6. He played excellent basketball, but I do think that he will get a huge spike in probably jersey sales and popularity as a result of staying, because nowadays it seems like an anomaly for a superstar to stay on their team, let alone a small market team. So it's really great for Sam Presti and the organization and OKC as a whole.
Yeah, I think he's gonna. I know KD's jersey sales have gone through the roof, but I'd rather have a Westbrook jersey, or I think most people would rather have a Westbrook jersey now. Or I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but
Yeah, and I think that especially once he starts playing and he starts being the guy every single night, I think that's going to really help the numbers too. But
yeah.
um, I think we talked about that a little bit, and we can get on to the Brooklyn Nets and their off season this year. So they made a decent number of moves. We'll start with their additions. They added Jeremy Lin for 3 years, 36 million. They had added Randy Foy for a 1 year minimum, as well as Anthony Bennett for a 2 year minimum. Louis Scola for 1 year, 5.5 million, and Grievous Vasquez for 1 year, 4.3 million. And let's start there. There are a couple guards there, and then Bennett and Scola. What do you think of these guys so far?
I thought what the Nets did was kind of interesting. I the Jeremy Lin deal looks pretty good actually. He's going to get 11.5 to 12 point 5 in his third year. I think his third year is a player option,
Mm-hmm.
and he could produce really good numbers. I mean, he could average. I wouldn't be surprised if he averaged 20 points per game and like 6 or 7 assists, just because there's still not a lot of talent. Um, I don't know what I mean. What do you think about Lynn as a specifically Lynn? I guess.
I I do like Jeremy Lin. I think that that might be a little high, but with his usage rate, I could really I, I think that definitely isn't unreasonable. Um, I think that he is definitely going to have an opportunity to really show what he's made of. I loved him in Charlotte last year. He was awesome to watch. And I'm excited to see him finally get a starting role. I kind of think that he's been swept under the rug a little bit, and he's been capable for a couple years of being kind of, I don't want to say a low end starter, but, like definitely a capable starting point guard in the NBA. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that he will have a lot of opportunities to score though because of the guys around him. The starting guard right now is Rondae Hollis Jefferson, who's not really a scorer, with Bohan Bogdanovic and Trevor Booker and Brook Lopez. So I think he'll get plenty of assists just from the Brook Lopez pick and pop. He runs the pick and roll extremely well, Lynn does. So he'll get his numbers there and have plenty of opportunities to score.
Yeah, I'm looking up what Walker said about him, and Kemba was like, he deserves to be a starter in the league. He's such a great player, and he proved that last season. There were games where I was off, and he carried the team, and I think that was definitely true during the playoffs too. I know Kemba, he can be known as a chucker at times, and he was off his game, even though he had a great series against Miami, and Jeremy Lin picked it up, and I think Charlotte's going to really miss that guy to kind of share the ball with Kemba. And I think if you play fantasy basketball, I would target Jeremy Lin. I think he's kind of a sleeper, and he'll put up good numbers on a kind of I think a bad team.
Yeah, probably the worst team in basketball, to be
Yeah,
honest. Not to, kick the Nets while they're down, but
yeah. No, they're a mess.
they
The,
are a mess. But I think they're doing the best that they can with what they've been handed. So, um, I think that this off season was good. It's nice to see them under the cap and looking forward. Another move that they made was they traded Thad Young for a first round draft pick, the 20th pick, who they took Karis LeVert with, and a future protected second rounder, which helped with the cap space. What did you think about this move?
so I didn't think Karis LeVert was going to go at 20, but I didn't mind. Uh, I didn't mind the pick at all because he kind of fits your prototypical wing player that you want. There's so few guys, or the guys that can shoot are so valuable in the league right now. And he has that potential, and he has the potential to guard multiple positions. It's just he's been haunted by a lot of injuries in college. So if he could get over the injury hump, I think that was a really solid pick. He could be their starting two or three guard. I think he's more of a two, um, because of his strength issues. But I think that he could be their future two guard in the future.
I totally agree. I really like Levert, especially for that pick and the team. The Nets, especially trading, into the first round, and they don't have another draft pick for 2 years. Um, I think that it was a risky pick, but one of those that has a high reward if it pans out, if he can finally get healthy, because he can score. Like you said, he's capable, or he appears capable of being able to be a wing defender in the league, at least a decent one. And he's got plenty of size to be a two guard for sure at 6'6". So I really like the pickup and moving Thad Young to a contender, or at least a high end playoff team in the East, to the Pacers was probably great for Thad. It helped the Brooklyn Nets horrible contract situation that they had prior, and I honestly think that given the player that they got, it was uh, overall a good trade.
Yeah, I agree. And he's kind of the brightest spot on their team. If you look at their roster, there's not a lot of good young up and coming players on the team. I mean, Rondé's a nice, intriguing player, but my problem with him is that like he doesn't shoot and he also never looks to shoot. So he's kind of a dark hole on offense. This team doesn't isn't close to making coming into the playoffs, but I mean when they if they ever do and Jefferson's on the court, I'm just gonna do what the Warriors did with putting Bogut on Tony Allen,
Yeah,
and like I think that it's just so hard to play a guy like that now these days.
it is, and I think that he's a player that they're kind of working on the Nets with their young guys. I think that they're just really taking flyers on a bunch of them, hoping a few of them pan out and they can kind of mold them into talent. And with the lack of picks that they have, I think that that's
Mhm.
honestly the best way to improve and kind of increase their youth and hope for a higher ceiling than what they have currently and what they've had in years past. So, given the kind of chokehold that they have in the draft, I really liked the moves that they've been making so far and their ability to find young players to add to the team, despite the fact that they have no first rounders forever.
Yeah, and they have to be creative with it. And I do think second rounders are still valuable picks, and so they used it to get that first round pick, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the other thing I wanted to point out about the Nets was a lot of the guys you mentioned, like Scola, Vasquez, Randy Foy. It seems they all signed 1 year deals, and a lot of these guys, and NBA teams don't really want anymore. A lot of, I mean, particularly because none of those guys are plus defenders.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it seems like the Nets are going to be used as this kind of pit stop to kind of get your stock higher. And I think that's what they're kind of doing, and that's what these players are coming into. I don't know if that could hinder like team chemistry at all, or I don't know how they're going to deal with it. I mean, it's good that they got those players because they actually can put like a somewhat of a respectable, not even respectable, but they could put a starting five together, I guess, with NBA players.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, so
no,
it's
I totally agree.
yeah,
And I think you're definitely right. It could be kind of a revolving door as an organization for players trying to increase their value. But I honestly don't think that's necessarily a bad thing given their position currently. And maybe they'll find somebody who does increase their value and can still play in multiple minutes. And not only does it make the Nets better, but it also gives that player an opportunity to showcase themselves and possibly get a contract on a team they might prefer. Or if they enjoy Brooklyn and the New York area, I mean, it's still a great market. Maybe they stay there and keep their increased role for more money because they are 1 year contracts and they can renegotiate. So I think that although most of these players are going to be leaving in a year or two, I think that they're putting themselves in the best position they can to get a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it wasn't their first plan of attack. I think their first plan of attack was, all right, let's give Tyler Johnson and Alan Crabb a boatload of money, and if they don't end up signing with us and the other teams don't match, then we could do these 1 year deals on these underrated guys or guys that are being looked over. And I really liked that they offered um, that money to those to Crab and Tyler Johnson. And I mean, did you think that like Portland was going to match when and that Miami was going to match when they gave those offer sheets?
Portland, in particular, I kind of felt like they were going to match just because I think that I think that Alan Crabb is a little bit, I don't want to say more deserving of the contract than Tyler Johnson, but
Maybe more proven.
right. I think that he is more of a, like, you can expect more out of him. Yeah, like I think that he has a floor that's higher than Tyler Johnson. But Tyler Johnson, I was very surprised that he got matched by Miami. I thought for sure he was going to be in Brooklyn. And I thought that was honestly, I think it's good that they're being aggressive, but I thought it was a little odd that he was the guy that they were aiming for, or one of the guys that they were aiming for, given that they just signed Lynn and Vasquez. But I honestly think they were just looking to get younger and better, and that would have definitely done that. And it was shocking to see Miami, match that contract.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not as surprised with the Crab deal just because it looks like this is kind of what Neil O'Shea does. It's just like he wants to keep as many assets as possible, and he doesn't want to see guys go for nothing for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
unless that player was Wes Matthews and coming off a big injury, which makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it seems like I thought Miami was going to do whatever they could to save as much money because they want to go for the big max players, and giving some of that money to Tyler Johnson just seemed surprising.
It seemed very surprising, especially given the Dwayne Wade issues, which we'll go over when we review the Heat a little more. But it was a little odd on Pat Riley than the unlike Pat Riley that
Yeah.
we've seen in years past. So I'm very interested to see where they go from here. Hopeful that Chris Bosh though can get back on the floor and see whether or not this Tyler Johnson match was worth it. But back to the Nets. I thought we could take a look at a few of the players they lost. They lost 32-year-old Jarrett Jack, Willie Reed, who is 26 in a forward or center spot, and Wayne Ellington at 28. So, what do you think of these players they lost? Anything big or concerning to you?
Not really. I think Jared Jack was the. I mean, he was their starting point guard a lot of the year for the year. But even him, Jeremy Lin's a better player than him, so they improved and they got younger, and all those guys are at least Jack and Ellington are past their prime. So I think it wasn't any big losses.
No, I totally agree. I think that they're going to be in a better position, honestly, with the talent that they brought in. And there's nothing wrong with losing any of these players. It was good to see all of them, they'll get signed elsewhere. But any other thoughts on Brooklyn?
Yeah,
How about,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what do you expect this team to do this upcoming season?
I think they're going to be the worst of this. Yeah, I think they're probably going to be the worst team in in the East, and maybe the league. I
Yeah.
mean, the Sixers are I think are going to be better than still struggling, but they just look like they have a brighter future. And this team, they made some nice moves, but it's still like dark days ahead for them.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, honestly. Um, they are kind of in one of those, they're trapped in a position where they're not going to be getting much better anytime soon. And I'd be shocked if they aren't the last team in the league this year. I just don't see this roster really producing much. They might be at the Sixers just because they have a little more depth and well-rounded, I guess, positionally by comparison. But and I mean, Brooke Lopez and Jeremy Lin are going to run a nasty pick and roll and pick and pop. So um, that they have that going for them. Other than that, though, I don't think that there's much to look forward to. They also signed Trevor Booker. We forgot to mention they did
Mhm.
sign Booker for 2 years, 18 million, and so they do have their starting five is Jeremy Lin, Rondae Hollis Jefferson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Trevor Booker, and Brooke Lopez, which it's they're NBA players. So um,
Yeah, that's the best way you could put it. But then what do you think about Brook Lopez? He has 2 years left. Uh, I could possibly see him. I think if you're the Nets, he's one of your better assets, who isn't young and that you're willing to trade. I mean, do you see the possibility of them trading him this year, or are the trade talks gonna come up after the year?
I definitely see the trade talks coming up this year, especially because since there's 2 years left, there's more value to his contract rather than an expiring deal to a team who might need him. But I don't know really what the market would look like, and I don't think that they would just ship him off necessarily. I could also see him being moved on draft night, this upcoming draft night, similar or near draft night, similar to Thad Young.
Mhm.
So I definitely think the possibility is there, but I don't think it's going to be a deal that is with little return. I think that they're going to really wait for an offer that's worthwhile, especially because, I mean, he did average 20.6 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks per game this year. So he's certainly one of the top centers in the league right now. And it put he is one of few that puts fans in the seats. So I think that he is certainly someone that they want to keep around until the right price is willing to be paid.
So what would you give for him? I mean, would you give up? I think because they got a first rounder for that young, that they're gonna want at least that and maybe a couple, maybe a couple young pieces.
I think that the teams that needed a center filled the position this past offseason because there were so many centers available in this free agency. So I think that if maybe there's a team that their big doesn't work out or they're not as high on someone as they're expecting, then maybe he gets moved. But I think that's going to be situational. And I can't think of anyone or any package right now that would seem like a mutually beneficial trade.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I thought maybe the Celtics could have gotten him and not have given up too much to get him. Or, but I mean, they already have Al Horford now, so I don't see any reason why they would. So yeah, I really don't know which teams are going to be interested in him. Um, but let's see, maybe the Lakers, who we're going to talk about next. But of course, they just signed they were one of the first teams to sign a center.
The
Uh,
worst contract in the free agency and also the first one made no sense.
you think it was the worst one?
Yeah, to me, I can't think of another one that I would put even close to the Mozgov signing. I mean, it was 4 years, $64 million for a guy that wasn't even in the rotation. I mean, he's 30 years old. He had a botched surgery after playing injured last year, and I just don't see where the Lakers saw the value that they gave. I mean, especially considering it was like hours into free agency beginning. Like there were so many other centers that they could have brought in and talked to and looked at, and they just needed to dive for Mozgov. It just blows me away. I can't think of another signing that just I didn't understand as much.
Yeah, I don't I'm not a fan of the signing, and he's how old is he now? I think he's around 30.
30. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
30.
Yeah, so it's kind of my guess is I'm not going to come to the Lakers defense here, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think they kind of knew that they didn't have a chance with Hassan Whiteside or any of the or Al Horford, and that they kind of wanted a big guy next to who could kind of be a somewhat of a rim protector next to Julius Randle because they know that he can't really do that. So he was their next best option, but I really question like what was the demand for Mozgov? Like, were there really other teams willing to pay him that much? I'm very skeptical about that.
I am totally skeptical about that. And if there were, I mean, I would have let them paid. Like I just don't understand it. Especially like if I definitely see where you're coming from, where they might not get the top pick of the center position in this free agency market. But there were so many centers that even if they couldn't find, like one of the top tier ones, like Festus Ezeli signed for 1+1 with a 1 year with a player option on the second for $7.5 million with Portland. I mean, if they really were going to overpay someone, why not give Festus like 18 million for 1 year? I mean, beat out his contract and currently over 2 years, let him get on the market. And if he plays well, I think that he's 26 years old. He has injury history as well, but I mean, there's he's a lot more bright of a future than Timothy Mozgov at 30, getting 16 million a year. And Festus Ezeli's timetable also makes significantly more sense than the timetable of Timothy Mozgov given the Lakers' talent. So I just don't understand it. I think that Mozgov is a good guy, good character guy, great locker room guy, and will play wherever he's needed. He doesn't seem to have any sort of ego, so there's that. And he does offer veteran leadership, but man, I just don't get the excessive amount of money.
No, I'm with you. I'm the one other point I was going to say about coming to the Lakers' defense, which you won't see me do often, um, is that 16 million is going to the best way to think about it. I guess is not the amount of money and instead like the percentage of the cap, in which which would be I guess 16 17% of the cap. I think
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the exact amount, but um, that's not that bad for a center, I guess. Like, I mean, for a starter, that's not horrible. Yeah, it'll be 15.92% of the cap. Um, but I'm with you, I guess. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Mozgov, and I'd rather have Festus, like you said. And what one more thing I was going to say about Mozgov was that he what the Lakers are paying for is hoping that he'll produce like he did, not this last year, but the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always you always have to be like a little bit worrisome when you're hoping a player can go back in time and kind of repeat the same success he did like 2 years ago. And I'd personally rather have Festus. And if it would be a lot more helpful are relieving to me if I was a Laker fan and I saw this deal given by the Lakers happen after uh, before this last year.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not really the amount of money that they're paying for the starting center so much as who the starting center is for me
Yeah.
and the timetable that he has. Because, I mean, even if he does go back to the player that he was 2 seasons ago, he his best season more than likely is going to be this upcoming one. He might stay the same the following year, and then he gets to being 32, 33. He's 34 at the end of his contract. I mean, and to me that's it doesn't make sense given the ages and the talent or growth that is necessary for the players that they are expecting to become the main core of this team.
So then, what do you think about the Luol Deng signing? Because he's also over his best years, and he's also going to be on a decline from this point on.
Yeah, I love Luol Deng. He's one of my favorite players of all time, but I also think that it was not a good signing. I mean, he's 31 right now. It's the same deal. Like, he is a capable starter. He was awesome last year at playing stretch four for Miami, but they have Julius Randle, so he's going to go to small forward. And I mean, he's a little old to be guarding those wing players right now. He's not moving like he used to, but he is another great locker room guy. He will definitely, I think, provide leadership, especially with Mozgov. Those two guys, I think, are going to be excellent for helping with the concerning maturity level of some of the Laker young guys. But all in all, I really think that it was too. If they were going to overpay him like this, 4 years for that contract, 4 years, 72 million was way too long in order to keep him. I thought that, like, going back to what you're saying about what percentage it was for the cap. I mean, Luol Deng's taking up 19% of their cap. That for probably 4 years. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, the cap's going to raise a little bit, but not like it did this past season. And I just, it's the same deal with Mozgov, where his best season with the team is going to be before their young guys hit a peak.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there is something to be said. There is a lot of value in having that locker room guy who could show the ropes to the young guys, and it's good to have a veteran presence for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Minnesota wanted him too, I think, and they dropped out of the hunt for Dang after they saw how much he was going to cost. So it really depends on on the team. Like, how valuable do you think that is? And I don't know if Luol Deng is worth that much. I would rather the Lakers go after, kind of do what the Nets were tried to do and go for a guy like Crab or Tyler Johnson and take a shot at these young guys who could kind of grow with the team, and then use a one year deal on a good high character guy like Caron Butler or something instead to kind of help with the locker room presence.
I agree. I mean, I think it is great to have a locker room presence, and it's definitely better to be able to have him in the starting rotation so that when something's going on the court, he can be tell D'Angelo Russell to settle down rather than like pointing at the ice in his veins. Um, but I think that they just overpaid for the presence, and Minnesota being in the dang hunt with the Thibodeau connection definitely uh, could have been a major factor in driving up the total years. But to me, it just seems insane to pay a 31-year-old 72 million over 4 years when you have these up and coming guys who are eventually going to get paid, many of them before that contract is out, and it's going to really limit your ability to sign other free agents, which the Lakers should be targeting in future off seasons.
Yeah, another thing I was gonna say about what I'm not gonna, God, I'm coming to their defense again, but um, the thing is, Philly has their pick, right?
Mhm.
If I think it's, God, I don't remember if it's top five or top three protected anymore, but whatever it is, it's a motivation. It's motivation for the Lakers to win more games. So I guess Mozgov and Dang will help them do that. And maybe it helps them keep their pick, in which case that's, I guess, not as bad a signing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from that perspective, but I just the way it locks up the cap room in future off seasons, in addition to what they're going to need to pay D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle and even Nance Jr. Like to me, it's concerning for the future of the team, but they definitely got better this upcoming season. I think that their starting five is an interesting one. Last year they were um, fifth in the Pacific Division, and they were last in the Western Conference. And I think that there's no way that with the roster that they have right now, they wind up in last place in the Western Conference. So right now, the depth chart is looking like D'Angelo Russell at the point guard, Jordan Clarkson at the shooting guard, Luol Deng at the three, Julius Randle as the power forward, and Timothy Mozgov as the center. What do you think?
So it's a better team, I think, than last year. But they're still going to be a bottom five team, I think, and I think, which means that the pick is top three protected. So they kind of, if they could get out of the top three, it would be really beneficial for them.
Mm,
But I didn't even know if they could do that, to be honest. It just, I think they're still going to be the worst, or maybe the second worst team in the Western Conference. Um, I I I I think they're going to be the worst team. Looking at, I think Phoenix is going to be better than them.
really
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, if Bledsoe is able to stay healthy. Um, I mean,
I
what do you think?
so I think that I think that their team is more complete and will run more fluidly than Phoenix's will, especially because their power forwards are both rookies and they have a young core. And I know they're getting healthy again, but I don't necessarily uh, know how Devin Booker, Brandon Knight, and Eric Bledsoe are going to kind of share the minutes and position spots. It'll be interesting to see if they run three guard combinations like they've done very, very briefly in the past. But I think it'll be interesting. But to me, I still have them below the Lakers. I think that D'Angelo Russell is going to have a decent step this year. He looked great in summer league, and I honestly think that with the Kobe show kind of out of the way from last season and the ball in his hand, he's going to be making great passes. He looked like a solid shooter. I think that he is going to really step up his game. And Jordan Clarkson, I really like him as a basketball player as well. Looks like he's developing his shot a little bit. And Lou Dang can still play a little bit of defense. Clarkson's a capable defender. Randall's a solid rebounder, and um, every once in a while shows scoring presence. But honestly, I think it all depends on Mozgov. But overall, I think that right now I like the team better than Denver. I probably like them if we're talking about top three and or bottom three, excuse me, in the league. I definitely like them better than Brooklyn. and I think they'll probably have a better record than Philadelphia.
I think they'll have a better record than the Nets and than Philadelphia. I don't think they'll be better than Phoenix, um, or Denver. But Denver, yeah, I don't think they'll be better than Denver. Denver won 33 games last year, and they're just a better coach team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we'll see. I think that's interesting. I think the Lakers could still lose their pick, and it'll be just fascinating if that really happens, and it'll cause more Laker fans to hate Steve Nash even more.
Yeah,
But I mean, it'll be interesting. I think the Lakers are a better team. I do agree about the Kobe show. Now that that's over, um, they'll be able to move on as a franchise, and I think that's going to be valuable for them.
I also I do like their depth. We haven't even talked about Brandon Ingram either. I don't think he's going to come in and really be a rookie of the year candidate, like at least a very serious one, just because I think that with his size and um, kind of limited scoring uh, opportunities, I don't think he's going to be a really solid scorer or transitionally into the league right away. I think that he'll be a little bit of a project, but a capable contributor in the rotation. And then Nance as well. He's another guy coming off the bench that I think will be able to contribute a little more than some of those other teams we talked about. And um, I like Zubac a lot too. I think he's a French rotation guy that they picked up in the draft. So I think it'll be very interesting. I definitely think that they'll be a lot more competitive than last year, and I'm excited to see their young guys kind of take on a role and responsibility that they couldn't with Kobe in the way.
Yeah, I think specifically that goes towards Russell and Clarkson. I
Mm-hmm.
think those both guys are going to have the best years of their careers so far. And I think the Laker fans are gonna. We were at Summer League, and there was definitely a hype about Brandon Ingram. And I don't know. I don't think it's fair to expect much from him in his rookie year, just because he's so young.
Yeah,
Uh, but and I think so. That's kind of the good thing about having Luol Deng there. He doesn't have to take a big role and disappoint Laker fans. I think he's gonna just. I think his first year is just gonna be a good year to learn from Dang, and learn how the NBA schedule is. And in his second year, I expect more better things from him than his first year.
I agree. And honestly, of as much as I disagree with the length of the Dang contract, I can't think of a much better forward to teach a young guy, the discipline necessary to be a real contributing player in the league and what it takes to grow because he's always been a hard worker. He was a leader in Chicago, and I think that he is going to be awesome for Ingram in his development and personality. I really do. So, in that sense, the signing was good, but still concerns about at length.
Yeah, of course, for sure. Another point news that I was that came out not too long ago was that Anthony Brown might play overseas again. This time not in China. Uh, he might. There's a rumored about a 600 plus thousand deal going on with a Turkish team called Anadolu Efes. And he apparently did well last year in the Chinese Basketball Association, where he averaged almost like 32 points per game or something like that. Uh, so I kind of find that interesting too. If I'm the Lakers, I'd rather him kind of play in the D League, where I could see how he's progressing, or kind of maybe get some minutes here and there on the team.
Yeah, I think that if they had a little bit more cap flexibility, they might consider a roster spot for him. But given that the position they're in right now, I think they're 600,000 over the cap, but when they renounce cap holds, they're going to be able to get back. I think they'll be about 9.5 million, maybe 9.6 million under the cap once they renounce some cap holds. So I think that in the future, I think that there's a chance he could find a spot, especially if he keeps playing well overseas. And given that he's only 23, with a real NBA body being 6'7", so I think that he is he could be seen shortly in the league, and they obviously would prefer him close to home, kind of in the D League, keep a closer eye on his production. But I think it'll be interesting to see him overseas and hope he does well.
Yeah. Um, and one more thing about the Lakers that I was going to ask you was, I know you don't like the Mozgov signing, and neither do I, but what do you think about the fit next to Randall? Because it seems like Randall is this going it's going to be hard to pair another big man next to him since um, Randall can't really shoot, and really he only has 1 to 2 go-to moves that are pretty predictable at this point.
It'll be interesting. I'm not really sure what to expect, to be honest. I think that Luke Walton has his work cut out for him when it comes to what the Randall and Moskov pairing is going to look like. But Pop actually recently said at the U.S. men's select team that he's been working very hard. He's a very coachable guy and listens. He had nothing but praise and said he was very enjoyable to be around so far. So I think that, especially coming from a guy like Pop, that's very good news for Lakers fans, regardless of maybe the fit this year. I think that they'll be able to develop and figure something out where both players contribute positively on the floor.
Yeah, anytime Pop speaks highly of a player, then my ears perk up. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm interested to see how he does. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I was higher on him coming out of college, but because his lack of shooting ability and inability to protect the rim, and his kind of predictability about just how he attacks the paint and with his spin move. I'm not high on him as other maybe Laker fans, but I do like his rebounding ability. And there's still, if he could find a way to shoot, that would just really help his game. But I guess you could say that about a lot of players too.
Yeah, absolutely. And according to the Los Angeles Daily News, I mean, it's one of those things that's said in off seasons, but it's also something that you want to hear in the off season. He's apparently doing 2-a-day workouts, focusing on strength and conditioning, in addition to heavy emphasis on his jump shot. So hopefully it'll develop. He is still very young. He's only 21 years old. And I think that he is going to really be a solid contributing starting player in the league somewhere throughout his career. Like I think that he has a lot going for him, especially given that he averaged 11.3 boards and 10.2 rebounds in only 28 minutes this past season, and it was his first real NBA season, given the pretty brutal injury that he had his rookie year. So I really I think that he will certainly have some issues with Mozgov early on, but I don't think that the jump shot is going to be a permanent issue. Also, considering that his free throw percentage it was 71.5%, I think that's a pretty good indication of being able to work on it and grow from it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Have you speaking of improved jump shot? Have you seen Dwight making those threes?
Yeah, yeah. It's always interesting seeing these guys, shoot in an empty gym or in just shoot arounds or in the off season when there's no pressure. I mean, I think that a lot of these guys, you'd be shocked by their ability to shoot when the game's not on the line and when they're not um, in the kind of condition that you're in, the fatigue that sets in running up and down the court. But I definitely wouldn't be expecting anything like that from Dwight in Atlanta this season. So I wouldn't get hopes up too high if you're a Hawks fan.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe it kind of gives a silver lining about his free throw percentage though, so that maybe that can improve. But another example of a guy who was shooting well in workouts or in those in a video in an empty gym was Papa Giannis, and I remember my friend messaging me saying like, "Look, Papa Giannis could actually spread the floor," and let me watch him in summer league, and this guy just looked terrible and didn't even want to shoot it from outside, and he's just the game action is so different. It's just
Yeah,
hard to expect Dwight being something different than what he's already been.
it's completely different. I mean, I remember going as a kid and seeing Ben Wallace. I always used to still do go to the shoot arounds before the games, and Ben would be draining mid range and 3-point shots. And I was sitting there thinking, why doesn't he do this during the game? But it's just not comparable when you're relaxed. It's easy going. You're out there just shooting around with the team, your coaches, and all of a sudden you're put in a game. I think that there are players that can really shoot lights out in a practice setting in an open gym, but when it comes to game time and the grind of a 48-minute game, I really think that the the whole thing changes.
No, I completely agree with that.
But it'll be interesting to see. I'm definitely interested to see if he can figure it out. I know they've been working on free throws a lot. There have been a couple of videos of people clapping around his head, trying to distract him while he's shooting some free throws. So those have been entertaining. But I, once again, would not expect a thing if I were an Atlanta Hawks fan.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but they're a fascinating team also, and I would be excited to talk about them when we get to have a podcast about them.
Definitely. Any closing remarks on the Lakers? I know that Larry Nance had an injury in summer league. He's been doing rehab for 2 weeks. He seems to be progressing really well, and they expect him to be fully healthy in another 2 weeks of rehab. So other than that, the team looks healthy and good to go. And I I I like where this team is honestly for this season in terms of getting a little more competitive. Even though I really disagree with the contracts that they signed.
Yeah, I think they're headed in the right direction. I I think the Nets would be the Nets don't have the same potential superstars or all stars that the Lakers might have in guys like Ingram and Russell. And so when you have guys like that, Laker fans have reason to be excited. And they're just gonna have to be patient, hope that they win enough games to keep their pick, and continue building through the draft until these guys mature enough where they can attract those major free agents like LA was typically doing before.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're right that they don't have anyone close to the talent and youth that the Lakers have. You know, with D'Angelo and Jordan Clarkson and Randall, but it's tough to get there with the draft picks. And I think that, like you said, they're heading in the right direction and doing all that they can to get the youth around them in Brooklyn. So, other than that, do you have really anything else to say about the Lakers or the Brooklyn Nets? You think we hit on everything?
Yeah, I think we talked about a little bit of everything, and it'll be exciting to see where these two teams are headed.
Oh, we did forget actually about the crazy trade. Jose Calderon, they acquired as well as a 2018 second-round pick, a 2019 second-round pick for Atir Mahok from going to the Bulls, which was really just to clear cap so that the Bulls could clear room for Dwayne Wade. But yeah, just a nice little pickup for them, a bench guy. At least he can shoot, even though he can't play defense at all.
I'm actually surprised they were willing to take on his salary. I mean, I guess it's only for 1 year, so they don't really have to. I mean, worry about him. But God, I'll be surprised if Jose Calderon gets another contract after this year.
Yeah, I think he is gonna right into the sunset.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised. Maybe a minimum somewhere. I think that he appears to be a pretty good locker room guy, so maybe it's one of those things, and we might see him, kind of take on a very, very much lesser role. But I was surprised too, especially given the signings that they had, that they were willing to take on that cap space. But as a Bulls fan, I was okay with it.
Yeah, and I mean the Lakers weren't going to give that money to anyone else, really. So, and they're still under the cap, like you mentioned. So, I guess it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah, so I think it's just one of those things that they got 2 second-round picks out of it, and taking that for 1 year, taking the 7.7 million, really wasn't much for the 2 second-rounders.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was probably worth it, and when you consider that.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps up this podcast. Stay tuned for another edition of Kill the Clock coming up. We're going to be doing several off-season reviews and talking about what to expect in this coming season. Thanks for listening, and look out for another Kill the Clock in the coming week.